Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Alhamdulillah. We are back again this week for another very, very, very beneficial Q&A. And this week we will be looking at some more of your issues, some of the problems that you've gone through, inshallah. And again, we're going to have a very able-bodied person who is going to address some of the questions that you might have. My name is Jamal Richards, and I'm representing my Muslim family today. Saqib couldn't be here, but inshallah he'll be returning next week. Now, what I'd like to do, brothers and sisters, is just to remind you of my Muslim family, what we do here, and why it's important for you all to, if you haven't done so already, to make sure that you subscribe and, just to ensure that you and your family are getting the most benefits of, some of the things that are out there, inshallah. So as you know, my Muslim family, it's has been set up so that as a whole family unit, you can all benefit from many, many different courses. There are some amazing courses that you really have to make sure you get your teeth into. Some of my favorite ones, from some of the famous shaykh that we have, and also one particular course which is going to be coming up very soon as well, which is going to be on addressing the issue of how to set up a side hustle, as it were, like a side business. So it's very important, inshallah, that you do make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. And this is just an example of some of the things that we will be addressing. So this week, inshallah, we are going to have with us again Sister Rahma Abdul-Lateef, who is a psychotherapist. And she can correct me if I'm wrong, inshallah. And inshallah, we're going to address some of your questions that you've had from the last few weeks. Sister Rahma, assalamu alaikum
wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Did I get that right, sister? You're a psychotherapist?
You did, yes.
Excellent, excellent. Look, sister, before we start, obviously you've been with us for a few weeks now. You've seen some of the issues. You've seen how important it is to have something like this, inshallah. So I'm sure you'd agree that, for everyone who's watching now, who hasn't had a chance to subscribe, that they really do need to. They can get actually some, better access to, some of the things that we're offering here. Yeah, so alhamdulillah, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to waste any more time because there's a lot of questions to address. So I'm going to move straight on to the next one, inshallah. The first one. So this one here, my husband gives all his free time to Islamic organizations. It is destroying our marriage as we don't spend any time together, but he can't see it. How can I advise him to prioritize the family?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. That's a very important question, I think. So this husband is spending a lot of time in doing the Islamic da'wah and actually not giving time to the family, which is now starting to create a shift in the relationship. I think that's what I understood.
Yes.
So my dear brother, what you're doing is brilliant, that you are putting a lot of your time in the service of da'wah and in the service of wanting to service Allah and to serve the deen, mashallah. I think that if I recall correctly, the Prophet ﷺ advised or taught us that everything needs its right and everything needs to be given its right. So there's time for da'wah, there's a space for that. There's time for family, there's a space for that. There's time for yourself, there's a space for that. And especially if it's now becoming counterproductive, because the whole idea really of getting involved in da'wah is wanting to attract the pleasure of Allah in your life. And therefore you have the primary responsibility, which is your family. And in doing one, you might want to consider not neglecting the other. So I think the sister, one of the things we might advise you to do is to encourage your husband, to remind him that everything has a right. You have a right, your children have a right, da'wah has a right, he has a right. And it's just finding a way where he can make some time to make sure that he doesn't sort of allow the family to fall apart. So if the husband and wife relationship is starting to be impacted, this will usually have an impact on the children also. And we're thinking about especially the mental health well-being of the whole family. So I think really that is it, the brother to pull back a bit and to be able to do both. And I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives men especially the responsibility of leadership, the responsibility of raising the family, and therefore being an example, being around and supporting the wife. Sometimes it's quite tough, women, to be doing all the child rearing on their own. And so, yeah, so I don't know if there's anything else that I would add, but it's to just help him to remember that his home also needs Allah. The Prophet ﷺ taught us how to give, to share ourselves out, and to give a right to each aspect of our lives, to the point that even brothers who attend to the masjid to do jama'ah, they're encouraged to pray their sunnah at home. So you can see how important home is, and especially when the relationship is starting to fall apart, it's very important that the brother really starts to hear what the wife is saying. Because I think sometimes people think, oh, women are maybe just exaggerating, this is the work of Allah. But your family is also exactly what you are doing outside is exactly required to be done at home, inshallah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put ease in that, and help you both to resolve this, inshallah.
I mean, are there any examples that you might have where she could maybe demonstrate to him that, obviously he gets as many rewards for, being at home and looking after the family?
I think if he's already in dawah, we would expect that he already really has he is equipped with the knowledge, because for you to be able to want to be involved in dawah, you are already a step ahead of the basics. So the basics are that people have got the complete responsibility of rearing their family. And if the woman is starting to feel the distance, that distance will impact the children. So then his responsibility is to make sure that his family is looked after. And I think people will then think, oh, but people did it before, husbands didn't need to. But it's the geographical aspect of where we live. It's the social aspect that life can be quite challenging, people to be on their own. We're not living in those large communities where you are not on your own, and every time you want to do something, you have somebody else, the children. We're not in a situation where we're living in communities. So life is very individualistic in many different ways, even if you have family. And I think it's important that the father is present and available. If he's spending all his free time in dawah, spending time with his children could also be dawah, and with his wife. So I think it's just that helping the brother, advising the brother to reminding him really. So it's just a reminder, because we're making an assumption that this is something he already knows, and maybe he's actually teaching people that in his dawah, about the importance of family and the importance of working together as a family. So I don't know if there is any practical examples, and I think it's a challenge for the sister. And the fact that she's raised the issue, that means she cares, because you wouldn't raise the issue if you don't care. But the idea is, if the couple relationship is impacted, it normally would impact the children as well. So that's quite important for the brother to know, inshallah.
Inshallah, jazakallah khair, sister. Alhamdulillah. Now, before we go to the next question, I want to remind everyone who's watching now that you hopefully will get an opportunity to have your questions answered as well. So please, obviously, make sure that it is related to the subject matter. So obviously, it's to do with families and issues within that. Sister, any other areas that you might want to encourage someone to ask a question on, so we know that we can make sure it stays relevant?
I think it's very important for people to ask what it is that is important to them and what is going on in their lives, because that would be the most important. Because we might think it's important for people to ask about this, but if it's not really pressing, if it is something that is not impacting them in their lives, Why would they? So yeah.
Excellent. Okay, you heard that directly, brothers and sisters, from the sister. So, inshallah, make sure you get your questions in, and hopefully we can answer them today. So we move on to the next question now. So, I have seen my family go from practicing to culturally practicing to not so practicing. I am worried for my children, so I have set boundaries in place. My family has become very irreligious in some aspects, so finds my stance very harsh. My wife and I are on the same page and have an amazing relationship with our children. However, the extended family is always bad mouthing us, which is taking a toll on my wife's mental health, and she now wants to relax the boundaries. She acknowledges it's the wrong thing to do, but says she doesn't have the fight left in her.
And that sounds like a very common happening in families. And the challenge is, I think, one of the most important things we think about from a psychological perspective. What is the motivation? What was the reason that those boundaries were put in the first place? Why do you need those boundaries? I think the question with regards to the family is quite general. We don't know exactly what the issues are. But when you as a couple, you agreed to put boundaries in place because you have certain ways and certain rules that you want your children to follow, why? Why are you doing that? That's the first question you need to think about. And what for? That's the second question. And who for? So there's three questions. Why did you put that in place? What are the reasons? And who for? Is it for you? Is it for against your family? Or is there a different purpose? So when you're telling me that it's to do with the fact that you want your children to grow up in a way that you believe will help them to develop an Islamic identity, then I think it's finding a way of growing the ability to allow whatever is being said to be said anyway. But you can only do that once you've answered the question, who are you doing this for? If you are thinking about the fact that this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires from you, and now you are doing it to be in the space of obedience with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the giving up wouldn't come into place. I think I'm reminded of a verse in the Quran, in Surah Al-Imran. I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك فقنا عذاب النار. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he's talking about the people who remember him sitting, standing, and sitting, while they're sitting, standing, or lying down. And then they look around the creation of Allah and they say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create this in vain. So when we are thinking about the fact that we haven't arrived, we're on a journey to our destination. And in the process of that journey, we have taken the Shahada, which means that we're proclaiming that we believe in Allah. And whatever we embark on would be that we're embarking on that journey as part of our worship. So then if that's the case, then you have to find a way. And I'm in no way saying it's not difficult. And I'm not playing it down that it doesn't wear you out. But if you are doing this purely to guide, to help, to want Allah to help you to guide your children towards Him, I think it's and both of you, husband and wife, you are on the same page and you're completely in agreement in whatever the boundaries are in place. I think it's finding that space where you can completely sit with it, and then could develop a line of communication with your families in saying, we know this is hard, maybe it feels harsh, but we want your support. This is something that we are choosing and we want you to support us. I think sometimes one of the things we don't do very well in our families is we don't talk enough, we don't acknowledge. So if the family is finding it difficult and finding it harsh, what the husband and wife might want to do is to acknowledge that the family is finding that difficult. And at the same time to say, we know this is hard for you. You want to be able to connect with the children. You want the children to be with you. We're asking you to support us to do this because this is the way we believe we need to do, and it's the right way to do it to help our children so that they can be guided. So I guess that's all that I would say, because this sounds easier, and I'm not saying it is not difficult for the sister, but it's easier in the sense that mom and dad are on the same page. That would have been more difficult because it's extended family, and I don't know if they're living together, because that would be a bit complicated. But if they have their own space, I think it's talking and respecting. If the people who are finding this difficult and saying things are parents, and it's finding the way of yani, what's the word? It's finding a way of acknowledging that it's hard for the family, but also asking the family to support them in what it is that they're doing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. But I think, inshallah, if that sister can even find someone she can speak with, or get some kind of therapeutic input if it's starting to impact her mental health, that would be something that she would need to get help for, but not to give up altogether. Because the thing is, she's not doing it for her and or for her husband. And I'm just saying, if she's not doing it for her or her husband, if this is something that is being done in the name of Allah, for the sake of Allah, for wanting to guide the children in a way so that they can know Allah and be able to obey Allah, then I think it's that she needs to get a bit of help so she can find that mental strength to withstand the challenge, and then both husband and wife to find a way of asking for support from the family. So turning it around, instead of creating the issue of them and us, and they're disrespecting us, and they're not allowing the children to do this with us, and Allah knows best.
Jazakallah, sister. And I hope that's going to be beneficial to the questioner. Now, we're going to address one of the questions from one of the viewers today as well, inshallah. Just to remind everyone who's watching now, please also share the link to this live stream tonight, because so many people will get the benefits from the answers to these questions. So as a problem shared, is a problem halved, as they say, but also the fact that, a problem from one person, everyone can relate to it. Okay, so make sure you do support this by sharing the link today. So the next question we're going to answer from one of the viewers now, inshallah. She says, Assalamu alaikum. Sister, if a husband doesn't pray and he doesn't do ghusl after we spend time together, as husband and wife, what should wife do?
Subhanallah. So that's a challenge. So I don't know if sometimes these things happen in different ways. So I can see the question, I hear the question, but it's raising more questions in my mind than my response. So the first question I have in my mind is, how was the husband and wife when they met? Did you, the wife, not pray before and started praying, and therefore the husband is still left behind on that? Because sometimes when people get together and get married and they were both more or less in the same place where they're not praying, they're not doing a lot of the rituals, Islamic rituals and stuff, they're together and it's not a problem. And then they start learning a little bit and they develop spiritually a little bit, and then one of them starts praying, and therefore now that starts to become a problem for the other not praying. So then the sister is responding. She's saying, yes, she started praying 4 years ago. But my question was, when you got married, were you both not praying? And if the answer to that is yes, you were not both praying, and you started praying 4 years ago. So it's that idea of encouraging and helping your husband to sort of get on the path of prayer. When he starts praying, inshallah, everything else will fall in place, because he will have to do ghusl before praying. But at the moment, it doesn't make a difference really. If he doesn't pray and he doesn't do ghusl, it all sounds like he's just in that space at the moment. So how do you encourage him? How do you help him? I don't know, what do you listen to? Is there a book? What is it that helped you to embark on the journey of prayer? And how can you help him to, how can you share your experience of why did you start to pray, and why it might be a good idea for him to also think about it. The whole idea here is thinking about Allah. We're thinking about worship. That's the purpose we're here. And so when we are thinking about worshiping Allah, we're thinking about worshiping Allah, but from on whose terms are we worshiping Allah? It's not an idea of when I want to, or when it suits me, or I will do it my way. It's very much on his terms. And that's really what makes you someone who believes in Allah and who wants to worship Allah. So when Allah tells you to do something, you do it. So that is that's the idea. The idea is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to pray 5 times a day. The Prophet ﷺ taught us how to do it. So again, it's going back to that position of where are you psychologically in your relationship with Allah? Where is He emotionally, psychologically, spiritually in his relationship with Allah? That's where you really want to help him to think. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us a question in the Quran. He says, فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ? So he says, and where are you going? It's a rhetoric question, but that just reminds us that we're on a journey. We haven't arrived yet, but where are we? What is our destination? And maybe sometimes reminding somebody what the destination is can also be helpful. But I see, sister, you've also said that if someone doesn't pray, he is not a Muslim. I think there's a conversation around that, but we don't do a blanket. Muslims are not, we're not here to label people, to sign people off. We're here to encourage. The whole idea is to encourage, to help people struggle. So before we say he's not a Muslim, we want to hear it from him. So what would take him out of Islam, the way I understand it, and I'm not giving a scholarly guidance here, he has to say he doesn't believe and he doesn't see the point in, there is a whole process that has to happen for us to arrive at that. So why don't we start at the place where you started together, not praying. You now, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, started praying. What inspired you? What were your reasons? Can you help him to come on board? With dua, inshallah, helping him and making a lot of dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help you and to help him and to guide him through you. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put ease in that process. And I think being nice and being encouraging and helping and not thinking about the fact that you are not a Muslim, and so it's those kinds of things. But then inshallah, what you might want to do is to see someone together, maybe your local imam, and have a conversation, and maybe your husband has some struggles and he might need to speak to that imam to get further guidance and further assistance. But the idea is that if he is not praying, I don't know if he sees the point of doing ghusl. So maybe your focus needs to be helping him and supporting him to pray. And if you're going to do that through your local imam, then inshallah, that's what you might want to do. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put ease in this for you. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all. Ameen.
Jazakallah khair, sister. And I do remember last week, Saqib Sata, he did make referrals to Islamic Council of Europe.
Okay.
So that's potentially something else the sister could explore to
No.
maybe to get further advice on the issue, inshallah.
Inshallah.
So yes, Jazakallah khair for that.
Barakallahu fiqh, sister.
Now, yes, and so what we can do now is let's take another question from the viewers, and
No.
again, before I do that, brothers and sisters, just remember You should share this link today. Let other people know about My Muslim Family and what we're doing here. If you haven't signed up already, just make sure you can see the link at the bottom, mymuslimfamily.com. Go on there just so you can explore exactly what it is that we do, what we're offering you, inshallah. Now, another question here, sister, we can put this one up, I think. So this questioner, Umaira Sheikh, she's asking, without love, can we marry someone in Islam? And I was going to maybe broaden that as well to say, should we marry someone in Islam without love? And I thought that would be a nice one for us to address.
And I'm just trying to understand the question. What is implied here without love? Or should we marry someone without love? That's the bit I'm not getting. What are we implying? Are we meaning if you see someone, you don't love them, you don't like them, but that just because you're a Muslim, you should marry them? That's one of the questions that come to my mind.
Yeah.
Or does it mean that if you haven't dated someone and actually been in love with them, should you marry them? So I don't know what the question is.
Yeah, I saw it potentially as not feeling love towards that person, but then of course you wouldn't anyway, because you'd need to have time to get to know that
Develop.
person.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's quite rightly sort of observed from yourself, that, you know, what does she mean exactly?
Yeah.
But again, obviously, maybe we could sort of put it down to attraction, maybe. See if that
Yeah.
would help. Yeah.
So I think it is a very different approach in our way of doing things as Muslims. So we know that we don't have premarital relationships and we don't have extramarital relationships. So that means you do not go out and date and be completely involved with someone in a love kind of approach. That means you are doing anything and everything with them. And also, you don't do that once you're married. So it's both before marriage and after marriage with someone else. So then how do we get all this idea of get to know one another? It's a very different process and different cultures do this differently. But we'll stick to the advice that we know purely is that attraction is very important. So we know that people are encouraged, especially, I think it's much more easier for the men. I know women also find someone attractive. But the idea is that the encouragement is you need to see the person you want to marry. There is ways of getting to know the person in a very Islamic orientated way, is that you have a third person there, and getting to know how much it's very important. I think we have a way that we do things in families, knowing each other and finding out about the family and finding out the boy or the girl from different perspectives. But I think these days there are so many different ways of doing things. The idea is to see the person and to get to know the person in as much information as you can, and in a very distant kind of manner, that there's no any kind of love involved per se. Love is something that we know happens after, or making love happens after but not before. So just because you're a Muslim, it doesn't mean that you're not finding attraction, you're not finding to see someone being at, you're not yani you have to be attracted to someone, you have to feel that you want to be with that person. But that's as far as it goes. Everything else happens after the marriage. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, and may He make it easy for us, especially people who are looking to find someone. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease the way. Inshallah. Ameen.
Jazakallah khair for that. Okay, so let's go to one of the questions from one of our subscribers. I work in an office environment and find a colleague attractive. I started avoiding her and putting up a barrier to avoid falling into haram. Now some of my colleagues think I'm a weirdo.
And that's quite, again, I think we're going back to the question that we had earlier about the couple and their children. It's very, very important for us to have the question of why. Answer the question of why. Why are you doing what you're doing? what, so you're asking, why am I doing this? What is the purpose of doing it? And if you can answer those questions, then let people can think what they want to think. If they think you're a weirdo, they can think you're a weirdo. There's nothing you can do about it as long as you know your why and the purpose. So you've just said that the reason you're avoiding her, that's your why. The reason you're avoiding her is because you're finding her attractive. What is it that you want to achieve from the distancing? Is you want to be able to protect yourself from falling into haram. Yani you want to protect yourself from being in a place with this person who you're feeling attracted to, in a place that you don't want to be. So that's the reason you are doing it. So as long as you know your why and the what is the purpose of it, people can think what they want. I think that's again where we're asking you to find that mental strength in the sense that you are completely mentally, spiritually, emotionally fine with what it is that you are doing, and so you cannot prevent people from saying and thinking what they think about you. But what is more important? Is what they think about you, or is it what you are doing and for the reasons you are doing it? And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put ease in this for you, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you the strength to continue to withstand this challenge, because it is a big challenge. And Allah knows best.
Jazakallah, sister. Before we move on to the next question, someone's just asking, is it only about relationships? Someone just asked.
Nah.
Yes, I think someone's asking, are the questions, should the questions only be about relationships? I mean, I know you mentioned in the opening earlier on that, it's just about whatever troubles you, I think you said, right? But obviously, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to allow this person to ask the question. We can see what they might type up and use it or not.
Yeah.
Again, it is important for it to be as relevant as possible. So we are getting lots of comments. We've got lots of salams, alhamdulillah. I just thought I'd sort of share a couple of those. We have one from Haji Javid Menhaz. This is a personal message for yourself, Sister Rahma.
Ameen, Ya Rabbi. Ameen to all of us.
Ameen, ameen. Okay, so what we'll do, right, let's go to another question, inshallah, from a subscriber. I have recently separated from...
Sorry, Brother Jamal.
Yes.
There are questions here, the live people are asking you, is this only about relationships?
Yeah. I mean, those are the questions that we're getting, but what would you say to that? Because again, we want to make sure that, that they can ask questions that's related to your main area or field or wherever.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, the question makes sense now, because the person who is writing is asking,
yes,
is there any scholar of the Quran here? Because they have a question.
I see.
Yeah. So yeah, I think for me, inshallah, for the moment we are thinking about relationships.
Yes.
And that's quite important in our lives. And maybe they can post the question, and then maybe you can take it when you have the next person who is doing the Quran, maybe might be able to.
Yeah, I was going to say we do next week. We'll have Sheikh Shakur will be returning. So any questions relating to that, Quran, fiqh, anything like that, you can ask then, inshallah. But yeah, I mean, obviously, for today, just generally, again, whatever suits Sister Rahma. But this will not be a question for today, I don't think, inshallah.
He can post it though. He can give you the question, can't he?
Yeah, I mean, but we won't be able to answer that today. That's the only thing. So yeah, you'd need to either email us. Or return next week, which I think will be much better. That you can ask that live and we can get it answered for you live, inshallah. Okay. Okay. So let's go to the next question then. So I have recently separated from my wife. Whenever it is my turn to see the kids, she purposely dresses them in the ways I disapprove. Example: teenage daughter taking off hijab, boys wearing shorts above knees, etc., and haram haircuts. She was practicing, but is now not so much. I want to see my kids, but it breaks my heart whenever I do.
Subhanallah. So the question is that the wife is sending the children to him, and purposefully. I think I had that word, on purpose.
Yes, he did use that
And
word.
yeah, and so I don't know. How do you know she's doing it on purpose? That would be the first question. Is it because there's a separation and therefore that's the shift? Because you see, when we're starting to think about separation and we start to think about the impact of separation, when children are separated from their parents, sometimes that is very difficult, and it is very, very, very challenging. Is it possible that this teenage girl is in that mode right now of being rebellious because whatever it is that has happened in the family to the point of separation, that has impacted her in different ways, and therefore she's cross, she's thinking, and I'm not going to do what you want me to do. That's a possibility. So I think one of the suggestions I'll give to the brother is, I don't know if they're on good talking terms, but if they're in good talking terms, it would be a good idea for mom and dad to have a conversation. Is mom struggling to help this young girl in dressing that way? How old are the boys? Are they too small that their mom is giving them small shorts? And is it okay even if dad doesn't like it? Because I think what you might want to do, thinking about this, that you are now separated, is completely focusing on how you build a relationship with your children. Distance relationships are very, very difficult to maintain and build and make them meaningful, and especially for the absent parent. So we think about the living parent and the absent parent. So the children are now living with their mom and they're not living with you, their dad. So therefore, your work and focus needs to be so much more on developing a relationship with your children, and you want them to feel safe and wanting to be with you and developing their love for you, and then you can ask them to do those things that you want them to do. They will. But I think it's very important to think about mom and dad in how you can get together and think about the bigger goal, which is raising your children in a way that you think will be beneficial to them and in how they learn how to live their lives. So co-parenting is very important. Even if people are separated, you still have the children joining you. So the children are going between mom and dad. You want to agree on joined up ideas. You need to agree on the boundaries. What are the boundaries that you're setting for the children? And it's working together. And again, we're thinking about the idea of, where are you going? You're still on a journey. You haven't arrived. You're on your journey. You're going somewhere. But who are you returning to? Because if you can find an answer for that, then you will find a reason to do things, even if it is beyond you and it's not something you would choose. But if you're at the service of your Lord, you can find a way of sitting together and talking together and thinking about co-parenting. And you can agree on a few behoundaries that you agree on. But when we're starting to think she's doing it on purpose, we are going in a conflictual direction. And so it won't help you and it won't help your children. So you have separated, alhamdulillah, the relationship wasn't working. That's the couple relationship. But the parental relationship is still there because the children are still young. So it's finding that space of talking. And if you can't do it on your own, get help. You can see your imam. If you have an auntie, a sister, someone in your family who can help to facilitate that. If not, you can find a therapist, because therapists are not just helping you to stay together, but it's also helping you to work together while you're not staying together, for the sake of the children and for the mental health well-being of the children. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put ease in this for you, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala soften both of you to be able to work together for the bigger goal, which is raising your children in the way that you both feel will be fit for them and help you to fulfill your duty towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But working together is very important. just because you're not living together does not remove the fact that you both have the responsibility. And instead of thinking that she's doing this on purpose, it could be that you want to understand what's going on. What is the emotional temperature? You know, divorce is a challenge. There's separation, there's loss. There's so many things that happen for the adults as well as the children. And so how do we start to consider the impact and how we can address that impact, as opposed to wanting to think you're just doing that to get at me or you're doing that on purpose? And I'm not saying that's not correct, but I guess it's just a question for me is, how do you decide it's on purpose? Young children are also struggling. It's a struggle for young people to start to think about the dress code and the peer pressure and if this is a young girl whose parents have separated, that is impactful. Is she pushing back because at the moment she's feeling she doesn't hold respect for the parents because of what she has experienced in the impact of divorce? So there are so many possibilities, inshallah, and I would invite both the father who is asking the question, I would invite him to really think about ways of exploring how he can work together with the mother to bring up the children in a way that works for both of them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put ease in this matter for the couple, inshallah.
I mean, I find that answer very profound, actually, because in terms of when you mentioned, the word, the use of the word purposely, and subhanallah, maybe if that creates a narrative in your head from the outset, then it makes it very, very difficult for you to communicate with your former partner. Because it's gonna be, you're gonna step off on the wrong foot, and without any possibility of really getting a good solution from that, good resolution.
So we are thinking about curiosity. Be curious, find out what's happened. Ask your wife, Rahma, what happened? I see Fatima is coming with a very short skirt. Is this a concern for you? I'm concerned. Or you can just say, Rahma, what happened? I'm concerned. She's a young girl. How can she walk outside like this? As a father, I think she can be harmed. We want to safeguard and protect her. But if you think, see, she's doing this on purpose, it gets in the way for you to be able to think about, this is our responsibility, mine and yours. What do you need from me to support you so that you can do what we need to do to protect our daughter? So I think it's that. That's where I'm coming from.
Absolutely powerful, yeah. Communication, absolutely, subhanallah. The questioner before, with the Quran question, you did mention about you tried to get hold of other scholars in the past but wasn't able to get in contact with them, which is why it's my preference that rather than write it or anything like that, I would love it if you could just join us next week, inshallah, so you can ask it directly again and you can be answered directly. So make sure you stay tuned for next week, inshallah. So what we're going to do is we're going to take another question from a subscriber. So my family is made up of very strong characters, so arguments are the norm. Now there is a baby in the family, and we want to move away from that. Arguments over the smallest issues have decreased greatly, but still take place. How should we work towards dealing with issues in a proper manner?
And I don't know again if I had the question in the way that I did, but the idea is that this is the norm in this family. I think that's what I'm understanding.
Yeah, that's what I see here. So arguments are the norm. But now there's a baby in the family. They say we want to move away from that, so that doesn't imply that they're doing it jointly. Yes, but arguments over the smallest issues have decreased greatly, alhamdulillah, but still take place. So basically, how do we work towards dealing with these issues?
And so I don't know what that means in our family. Is it just the husband and wife who have just had a baby? Or is it the norm in their families extended that everyone is always in arguments?
Yes, good question, yeah.
And so when we start to think about arguments and we're starting to think about the impact of those arguments, especially for new babies and children who are being born in those conflicts. So you see, arguments are not always conflict. Again, the question is not clear. Are these arguments based on conflict, or is it an argument because this is my point of view, that's what your point of view is? And sometimes there's that push and pull in families. So I guess the idea would be that when we are thinking about children, babies, from babies now, research is suggesting that conflict, if these arguments are conflictual, that means husband and wife getting in big arguments and fighting, and that actually doesn't have an impact on the child. And I'll say this, I know maybe it might not be welcome, but according to the law of the land, it is actually something that would get, if it's bad, it would get authorities involved. Because one of the things we know now, I think before there was an idea that if there's a physical violence between parents, that's when an intervention would happen. But I think now with research and experience and looking at children who live in conflict relationships, now we know that the impact on their emotional well-being and psychological well-being is so high up that it's completely something that is not recommended that we do. So, and especially not in front of the kid, not in front of the child, because there is that mental and emotional suggestion. And I think the psychological impact of distress, especially conflict, is not quantifiable. So there's the interest to prevent and to safeguard children. So I don't know if I've understood this question, or I'm just giving a general response, is that if the arguments are very conflictual, then inshallah, having the child, this inshallah would be the turning point, that those arguments are completely cut out, and try to start to resolve and address the issues that are creating the arguments and the disagreements. How are you doing it? Are you able to hear one another? So one of the things is it's not always possible to fix something that somebody raises, but it's very important to acknowledge. So if somebody raises something and that is something that disturbs them, and they give you feedback about it, even if you don't agree with them, you need to acknowledge, yeah, okay, I didn't realize that this is how this makes you feel. Now I know. But yes, the most important thing is to consider the impact. That's very important. I think one of the things we don't really appreciate is that relationships are transactional. So there is a transaction that is happening between us, but they're also transformational. So we are transformed in certain ways through our relationships and because of our relationships. And that's quite important. So when you have a young child, you are completely the person or the people that young child depends upon and depends on. So your distress, they can pick up. Neuroscience is now teaching us a lot of things about mirror neurons. So there's something they call mirror neurons in the brain. And the neuroscientists are actually putting those magnets on the head of the baby and the brain of the baby and the mom, and we see the interaction, and we see the impact. So you might think they're a baby, they don't know anything. They do. They have that connection with your brain, and so then we see children are starting to grow up and they're very hyper, or they're disturbed, or we're seeing children as young as 6 years old presenting with depression. So it's very important for us to start to think about the impact of what we do on the people we love and the people we think we're protecting, and the young people that we're raising, our babies, our children. All that is very important. So remember, if you don't remember anything else I said, relationships are transactional and they're also transformation. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for you guys to be able to come to an agreement in the things that you don't agree on, and for the sake of the new baby, inshallah. Because you're already thinking about it, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it possible for you. think about why you want to change it and for what reason. What is the purpose? And then inshallah you'll be able to. And Allah knows best.
Jazakallah, sister. We what we'll do is we'll take one more question from a subscriber, and also we'll try and do one from the viewer, and we are coming close to the end. So let's see. I, as in female, this sister here, have noticed beginning signs of abuse in my brother's relationship. The wife is the wife's every demand is met. However, she is never satisfied. He is head over heels of her. I don't want him to think that I'm meddling, but I want him to see his error.
I think, I don't know, we only have 3 minutes or 2 minutes now.
We've got a few more. We've got a few more minutes. Yeah, don't worry if we go
okay,
a few
great.
minutes, it's fine.
So give me that question one more time.
Yeah. I've noticed beginning signs of abuse in my brother's relationship. The wife's every demand is met. However, she is never satisfied. However, he is head over heels for her. I don't want him to think I am meddling, but I want him to see his error.
So that's a beautiful question, and from a very beautiful person, if I may say so. I think one of the things I would invite the sister who is asking the question is, first of all, to think about her thinking. When you're thinking about abuse, the word abuse, that puts you in a certain space. And so how you feel towards that wife will be a certain way. If you change that word into something else, if we can imagine that it's not abuse or it's not abusive, what could it be? So I think what I've heard from that question is this sister is not satisfied. Doesn't matter what this brother does, doesn't matter how much he is able to try to meet her needs, she's not getting satisfaction from that. And so I think if I was seeing them as a couple, one of the things that I would sort of play with as an hypothesis, it sounds to me like this person is thinking about getting their needs and satisfaction fulfilled externally. That's one of the ways I could think about it, and that's one of the things I might explore with both of them. And then I would be suggesting to the sister, to the wife, to really think about what her expectations are, what her ideas of marriage are, and how can she find happiness or satisfaction from within. Because I'm not hearing this as this sister is what I'm hearing is this sister is looking for satisfaction externally, which is something that you can't achieve. But the questioner, the sister who is looking on, she's looking at it as abuse. Now, when you're starting to think about it as abuse, you've already disabled yourself in actually being helpful. So it's lovely that you're concerned and you're caring, and it's finding a way how you can help them. So you can be curious. You can, I don't know if the sister-in-law is your friend, if you can have a good conversation together in thinking, or if your brother gets on well with you, you could also raise it as a concern. But not one of the advice or one of my invitation to you would be, please change the word. The minute you raise this, any conversation with your brother, when you say abuse, he will completely say you're starting to interfere and you want to create a problem between us, and I don't think she's abusing me. So you will lose the conversation. But you could be curious. You could have a conversation of concern, and you could say, you know, I think maybe you need to find a way of supporting your wife to find to find satisfaction from within. That is something about her, actually. It's not about anyone else. But I would lose the word abuse. But it's lovely. It's beautiful to see sisters concerned about a brother her own brother, and that's beautiful. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve you, sister, for asking the question, and may Allah give you the ability to support them, to help them to find different ways. But I think it's important that something gets done before things get too far, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.
Sister Rahma, Jazakallah khair for that. You're absolutely right. We have actually come to the end of this week's Q&A. We've had a really good range of different questions which have been answered. For the viewers, I always like to see the viewers getting their questions answered as well. And we answered all the subscribers' questions this week as well, inshallah. So I'm really happy about that. I don't know if there's any sort of like closing comments you might want to make for today. Just as a general advice for everyone in terms of like with the home relationships, because we all benefit from this. So yeah, anything you might like to add?
I think the closing remark would be that we've seen how important relationships are to our lives, and we know that we don't exist in isolation. We exist in families, in relationships, and the challenges of relationships that they bring into our lives. So it's very important to focus on relationships, focus on our families, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about us as families in the Quran. He talks about families being successful and families being unsuccessful. So we're together in this, whatever it is that we're trying to work towards and to achieve. And I would think that it's very important for us to nurture and to be people who are nurturing, people who are able to be thinking together, people who are able to be finding ways of excusing us, ways of forgiving, ways of different things. But the focus is making sure that we are developing healthy spaces where our children can grow up. Because in school, children have a lot of stress. There's a lot of social pressures that children are facing at school. So we want to make home what we call a secure space, giving them a secure home so that they have a space that they feel safe, they feel secure emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. So when they go out, they have the capacity and the ability to manage the challenges outside the home. And it is our responsibility to inshallah, focus on that and do it with complete purpose. If anything that we do with a purpose and purposefully and intentionally and deliberately, you get the results. So you have to deliberately be creating that space, making it safe, making it conducive. Because if children are not feeling safe and they're not finding that security in the space at home, outside is not safe, it's not secure. So in my field of work, we always think about creating a secure base or developing a secure base, so that the children have got that secure base that gives them enough capacity and energy to face whatever else that they need to face outside of. But because they know they have a secure base, they feel safe, because they know the minute I cross over to get into that space, that is a space that gives me security. But I think, subhanallah, families are struggling in that we're not able, there's so much that is going on for us as adults. Stress has become second nature to us, and that we are not having enough time to think about creating that space on purpose, consciously, purposefully. Then the children are feeling a bit lost. And then when they take action, or when the impact is too much and the children take a reaction to that, then we find ourselves in thinking, oh my gosh, what has gone wrong here? So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us that ability to focus on our families. This is worship, raising your family and creating the way in which they can feel secure mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally is completely our duty and our responsibility. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it possible. Ameen ya Rabbi.
I mean, Jazakallah khair, Sister Rahma, and really looking forward to 2 weeks' time when you'll be returning, inshallah.
inshallah.
Fantastic. Until then, may Allah bless you, may Allah reward you, and take care. Have a good fortnight, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time, inshallah. Jazakallah.
Inshallah.
Take care, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
So, brothers and sisters, I've certainly found a lot of benefit in today, and I hope you did as well. Don't forget, it's very therapeutic on many different levels. You know, hearing somebody else's problem being dealt with in this manner is something that we can apply to ourselves, which is why, you know, again, I encourage you to make sure that you get on board with my Muslim family. There's so much more that you can benefit from our courses, from our series, and so much more. So, inshallah, please make sure that you join us again. Next week, we're going to have Sheikh Shakur return again. And the many questions you're going to have for him as well, inshallah. So, until then, brothers and sisters, looking forward to catching up with you next week. Take care. Assalamu alaikum. I'm so tongue twisted every time I try to say that. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum.